Woman and 3 kids bound and abandoned. When he saved them, the real nightmare began. The twilight sky sagged under a weight of gray clouds, drenching the forest in relentless sheets of rain. Thunder echoed distantly, a grim reminder of nature's indifference. Caleb Benton tightened his grip on the reins, eyes narrowed against the rain, his body a hardened statue of vigilance atop his weary horse. He had learned long ago the world was merciless lessons written in the scars beneath his faded leather coat. The muddy trail stretched endlessly ahead, fringed by dense, ominous trees. Something in the air tonight stirred Caleb's instincts. It wasn't just the storm. He sensed a shadow lurking in the dark. Suddenly, a faint cry pierced through the deluge, barely audible above the pounding rain. Caleb's breath quickened, his pulse drumming in his ears. He reined his horse abruptly, head cocked, listening intently. There it was again, a desperate sobbing, the unmistakable anguish of innocence in peril. Driven by a surge of urgency, Caleb urged his horse forward, mud splattering beneath hooves. As he cut through the trees, the cries grew clearer, tugging at memories he longed to bury. Emerging from the thicket, he halted at the ghastly sight before him. An old wooden wagon, half sunken into the mud, sat abandoned, shrouded in misery. Caleb dismounted swiftly, his boots splashing heavily as he approached cautiously, his rifle clenched tight. He saw them clearly, then a woman and 3 small children, bound cruelly, shivering in ragged clothes, their eyes wide with terror. Caleb's stomach twisted in fury. He scanned the forest edge quickly, rifle raised, wary of any lurking menace. Satisfied they were momentarily alone, he knelt beside the woman, slicing through the rough ropes that chafed her wrists. "You're safe now," he assured softly, voice firm yet edged with urgency. "Who did this to you?" The woman's trembling lips struggled to speak, her eyes glazed with trauma. "Bandits," she whispered weakly, "killed my husband. Left us here as bait to lure others." Caleb's jaw tightened. He knew this cruel tactic, baiting the innocent, drawing in unsuspecting heroes, then slaughtering them for their supplies. His gaze fell on the youngest child, barely 3, sobbing quietly. A hot surge of protective rage flared within him. He released the last of their bindings quickly. "I'm Caleb," he said, helping the woman gently to her feet. "We can't stay here. They'll return." She nodded numbly. "Sarah, my children, James, Eliza, and Samuel." She clasped her youngest protectively, eyes glistening with fear and determination intertwined. Caleb helped them swiftly from the wagon, sensing urgency with each passing second. As they stepped away, he heard distant hoofbeats approaching rapidly, splashes signaling violent pursuit. His heart leaped. "Run," he commanded, guiding Sarah and her children toward the tree line. He followed behind, instinctively positioning himself as a shield, eyes darting backward repeatedly. The dense forest swallowed them whole, its tangled roots and branches clawing at their clothes. Caleb moved swiftly, yet carefully, aware that panic now would doom them all. He had survived countless battles, but none had gripped him quite like this. Protecting innocence felt heavier. More desperate than warfare. Sarah clutched Samuel tightly, James and Eliza stumbling along bravely, their young faces hardened prematurely by tragedy. Caleb marveled silently at their quiet strength. He glimpsed Sarah again, struck by the fierce resolve burning beneath her fear, reminding him of another woman from long ago, whose memory still haunted his dreams. Voices echoed through the rain-slicked woods behind them, ruthless and mocking, followed by cruel laughter. Caleb knew they were being hunted for sport. With brutal clarity, he realized fighting in open ground would end disastrously. He needed to find shelter, and quickly. As if summoned by his desperation, the landscape shifted, revealing rocky hills and scattered boulders ahead. Caleb guided them upward, mud and rocks scraping their knees, fingers numb from the cold. They ascended until he spotted a shallow cave, barely visible in the fading dusk, nestled beneath an overhang. He ushered the family inside, shielding the entrance with brush and branches, camouflaging their sanctuary. Inside, the cave was narrow and damp, but offered a fragile promise of temporary safety. Caleb swiftly positioned himself at the entrance, rifle raised and steady, eyes scanning tirelessly into the gloom. Sarah sat huddled with her children, whispering soothing words that disguised her own shattered nerves. As silence reclaimed the forest, Caleb's heart slowed, though vigilance never waned. He glanced back, catching Sarah's gaze. They shared a silent conversation of unspoken understanding, gratitude, trust, and mutual respect forged by sudden danger. "Why were you traveling alone?" he asked softly, curiosity tempered by caution. Sarah took a breath, eyes distant, haunted by memories. "We had a farmstead. It was isolated, peaceful once. But the war changed everything. Men turned desperate, violent. They took all we had, killed my husband because he resisted. He told us to run, to find someplace safer." Her voice cracked slightly. "There's nowhere safe anymore." Caleb felt a pang of familiarity. A world shattered by violence was his only constant. "I've known war too," he admitted quietly. "It follows you long after the last bullet." She studied him intently, recognizing a shared darkness lingering beneath his stoic facade. "Do you have family?" she asked hesitantly. "Had," Caleb replied shortly, emotions locked behind his hardened expression. Sarah understood his meaning instantly, and a silent bond strengthened between them. Suddenly, Caleb tensed, finger tightening on his trigger shadows. Moved swiftly below. Bandits had reached the hillside, their murmurs echoing threats clearly audible. Fear gripped the children tightly, their eyes wide and glassy. Caleb motioned gently for silence, signaling reassurance. Their lives hinged on stillness and restraint. Minutes dragged agonizingly onward, the bandits' movements growing louder, closer. Caleb silently willed them away, praying desperately the rain would mask their scent, their breath, their very existence. After an eternity, the shadows receded, voices fading into the storm. Caleb exhaled slowly, muscles trembling from prolonged tension. Night descended fully now, wrapping them in inky darkness. Caleb allowed himself a moment's reprieve, though his vigilance never faltered. Exhaustion seeped through his limbs, yet sleep remained impossible. He positioned himself strategically near the entrance. Ever watchful. Sarah gently rocked Samuel, lulling him into uneasy rest. James and Eliza huddled closely, whispering words of comfort to each other, small figures, bravely enduring fear far beyond their age. Caleb marveled silently, recalling his own lost child. Would he have been so brave? Hours passed slowly, silence thick and oppressive, punctuated only by distant howls and the rain's relentless drumbeat. Sarah's quiet voice broke the stillness. Softly, "Why help us? You risk your life for strangers." Caleb's eyes never left the darkness outside. "Because someone must," he whispered firmly, each word carrying quiet conviction. "And because I once hoped someone would do the same for me." Sarah nodded thoughtfully, appreciating his simple truth. Caleb's words echoed deeply, instilling renewed courage. They would survive, she decided firmly, for her children, for herself, and perhaps for Caleb too, an unexpected guardian bound to them by circumstance and compassion. The rain eventually softened, replaced by eerie calm. Caleb knew their moment of reprieve was brief. Soon they must move, must flee further into unknown peril. He glanced back into the cave, the sleeping children stirring memories painfully sharp, yet strangely healing. He felt renewed purpose perhaps. Redemption was not beyond his reach. Drawing strength from the resilience he'd witnessed tonight, Caleb turned back to the forest. Their battle was far from over. Yet deep within him stirred something he'd thought lost forever: hope. He would protect these innocents at any cost. For the first time in years, Caleb Benton was no longer a mere survivor. He had become a guardian, a defender of life amidst chaos. And though darkness stretched endlessly before him, tonight, at least, he would not face it alone. Dawn came slowly, a pale gray herald that filtered through lingering mist, illuminating the world in muted hues. Caleb Benton eased cautiously from the cave's shadowed entrance, his body stiff from hours spent vigilant in the bare chill. Fatigue etched lines deep into his face, yet his resolve remained unbroken. Danger lingered unseen, a constant threat lurking in every shifting shadow. Yet for now, all seemed quiet. Behind him, Sarah gently roused her children, their small bodies trembling in the morning chill. Caleb watched silently, feeling something stir inside him, an aching memory of warmth and tenderness he once knew but had long buried. It unsettled him, yet also ignited a fierce determination. He would see this family through their trials. Sarah stood, brushing dirt from her ragged dress, lifting Samuel tenderly. She turned, meeting Caleb's gaze with a look of cautious gratitude and something deeper trust. Caleb felt the weight of that trust. It both invigorated and terrified him. He had been a solitary wanderer too long, but he would honor this bond, fragile yet strengthening with each passing hour. "We need to keep moving," Caleb said, voice firm yet gentle. "Those bandits won't stop searching." Sarah nodded solemnly, her expression resolute. The children quietly accepted the news, their small faces displaying bravery beyond their years. Caleb admired their quiet courage, reminded of his own child, who had shown similar bravery right until the end. The forest, once dark and forbidding, now offered daylight cover, its dense canopy sheltering them from prying eyes. Caleb guided the family forward, his movements precise and cautious. He navigated trails invisible to less experienced eyes, pausing occasionally to check for threats or reassure the children with silent gestures. A nod, a faint smile, small actions that spoke volumes to the frightened hearts he now protected. Hours passed slowly, each step more arduous than the last. Caleb knew the children's endurance was fading, their exhaustion apparent in drooping shoulders and heavy footsteps. Finally, he spotted an abandoned cabin nestled in a clearing, a decrepit relic nearly reclaimed by the wilderness. Yet it promised shelter, at least briefly. Caleb cautiously approached, rifle ready, scanning carefully. Once confident in its safety, he beckoned Sarah and her children inside. The cabin smelled of must and decay, but provided vital protection from the elements and hidden eyes. Caleb swiftly fortified the door, meticulously arranging debris as camouflage and an alarm against intruders. Inside, Sarah gathered her children close, murmuring gentle comforts. Watching her, Caleb felt admiration grow. Despite the crushing weight of loss, Sarah maintained fierce dignity and determination, safeguarding her children's spirits. In this, she reminded him vividly of his late wife, a woman whose strength had once anchored his world. He moved restlessly through the cabin, quietly gathering materials, scraps of cloth, abandoned tools, anything that might help in there. Survival. He paused, startled when he noticed Sarah's attentive gaze following him. "You seem accustomed to hardship," she observed softly, breaking the silence between them. Caleb hesitated, then nodded slowly, eyes distant. "War taught me well. Survival's a relentless teacher." Sarah's eyes softened knowingly. "My husband once said something similar. He believed hardships made people stronger, but they break us too, don't they?" Caleb paused, the weight of memories momentarily overwhelming. "Yes, sometimes beyond repair." Sarah regarded him gently. "Yet here you are, risking everything for strangers." Perhaps you're not as broken as you believe. Caleb's throat tightened unexpectedly. He nodded, unable to speak, turning abruptly toward the cabin window, feigning surveillance to conceal the emotions her words stirred within him. The stillness was shattered suddenly by a noise outside, a heavy step, stealthy yet purposeful. Caleb stiffened instantly, signaling urgently for silence. He positioned himself strategically, eyes alert and heart racing. A door rattled faintly, and the sound of cautious footsteps circled the cabin. Through a crack, Caleb glimpsed movement, a solitary figure moving quietly. He tensed, ready to strike. Yet something held him back, a subtle hesitation guided by instinct rather than reason. As the stranger moved into clearer view, Caleb saw he was a Native American warrior, muscular and poised, eyes sharp and wary, scanning the surroundings with practiced vigilance. Caleb carefully considered his next move. Experience told him caution, yet intuition suggested potential alliance. Slowly, he stepped outside, rifle lowered slightly, a calculated gesture of trust. The stranger reacted swiftly, spinning with astonishing speed, arrow drawn. Their eyes met, tension crackling like electricity between them. "You're not the bandits," Caleb said calmly, noting the stranger's wary but curious gaze. "No," the man responded, voice steady yet guarded. "I hunt them." They studied each other, recognition passing silently and mutual acknowledgement of shared enemies. Caleb gestured carefully to the cabin, signifying protection of innocence. The warrior nodded slowly, understanding clearly communicated without further words. He lowered his bow slightly, signaling cautious truce. "My name is Tahoma," he said, voice deep yet quiet. "I have tracked these bandits. They destroy all they touch." "Caleb," he replied simply, finding unexpected comfort in naming himself aloud, trusting his safety to this stranger. Tahoma entered the cabin warily, eyes surveying Sarah and her children with respectful curiosity. Sarah watched him with cautious hope, sensing in Tahoma an unexpected ally rather than threat. He inclined his head solemnly, silent gestures communicating dignity and peaceful intent. As daylight faded into twilight, an uneasy yet promising alliance formed. Caleb and Tahoma exchanged guarded but meaningful words, carefully revealing histories marked by loss and struggle. They discussed strategy quietly, mutual respect deepening subtly through shared experiences and goals. Tahoma was driven by vengeance against the same violent men who destroyed his village. Caleb by his own painful losses and newfound duty to Sarah's family. Their bond was forged quietly through brief exchanges, mutual trust growing with each careful gesture and deliberate silence. Night fell again, and the cabin grew quiet with watchfulness. Caleb noticed Tahoma occasionally glancing toward the children, his expression subtly shifting with an unspoken grief. Caleb recognized immediately the warrior had known similar loss. "You lost family?" Caleb whispered, breaking their silence. Tahoma nodded solemnly. "The bandits took everything. My village, my wife, my son." Caleb's chest tightened. "I lost mine too. War claimed them." Their eyes met, grief silently acknowledged, strengthening their bond immeasurably. Each understood now the depth of the other's pain, bound by shared sorrow and quiet determination for justice. Hours passed, and Caleb eventually slept briefly, trusting Tahoma implicitly to maintain vigilance. Awakening at dawn, he observed Sarah preparing a modest meal from scant provisions, her quiet resilience bolstering everyone's morale. Caleb marveled again at her strength, realizing how essential her presence had become, not only for her children but for him. When morning came fully, Tahoma rose abruptly, sensing distant threats. "They are near," he warned urgently. Caleb immediately grasped the severity, preparing quickly for departure. Their fragile refuge had become compromised. Danger pressing them forward again. Sarah gathered her children close, casting Caleb a look of quiet trust and determination. He felt a surge of protectiveness, strengthened by new allies and renewed hope. Together, they fled swiftly, Tahoma expertly guiding their path through terrain he knew intimately. Despite exhaustion, spirits lifted subtly, the bonds between them. Initially fragile and uncertain, now fortified deeply by shared adversity. Caleb found renewed purpose in protecting these lives, guided not only by duty, but by deeper affection. Sarah, once helpless, now walked beside him with quiet strength, their bond unspoken yet profound, but the threats remained ever present, closing relentlessly from behind. As they moved swiftly through the wilderness, Caleb knew their battle was far from over. Yet he felt, perhaps for the first time in years, something akin to hope tempered by caution, but undeniably present. Beside him were allies, bound by trust forged in adversity, capable of facing whatever came next. They moved steadily forward into uncertainty, the future fraught yet united by bonds stronger than fear or despair. Caleb Benton, once solitary and broken, now walked willingly into the unknown, not alone, but among friends. Shadows gathered ominously behind them, heralding darker trials ahead. Trials Caleb knew they must face soon. The bonds they forged in adversity would soon be tested as never before. The horizon blazed crimson as twilight deepened, casting shadows elongated and distorted through the dense woodland. Caleb Benton moved purposefully, leading Sarah and her weary children through tangled underbrush, his every step deliberate yet quiet, fueled by the urgency gnawing deep within him. Beside him strode Tahoma, eyes narrowed in alertness, tracking invisible threats with a warrior's precise vigilance. Though exhaustion seeped into Caleb's bones, his heart drummed with relentless tension, driven by the certainty that their pursuers closed in once more. Yet alongside fear burned a newfound resolve, a resolve born from protecting something precious, long lost to his solitary existence. Sarah and her children, now his family in a way that felt dangerously fragile, ignited in him fierce protectiveness. He scarcely recognized in himself. Their journey pressed toward distant hills, cloaked in darkness, yet offering hope of refuge. But hope was fleeting. An eerie silence fell over the forest, unnatural and oppressive, heightening Caleb's senses, adrenaline prickling through him like ice. Tahoma halted suddenly, raising a cautious hand. Caleb tensed instantly, heart hammering. Then the faintest rustle echoed through surrounding foliage, a whisper of menace hidden beneath the calm. The moment fractured violently, as men erupted from concealment, figures cloaked in shadow and hate, eyes wild with violent intent. Chaos surged forward, an eruption of violence as bandits lunged ferociously, snarling threats slicing through the twilight. Caleb's movements became pure instinct, each strike precise, defensive yet lethal, protecting Sarah's children with desperate intensity. Tahoma moved with fluid grace beside him, arrow after arrow finding deadly purchase. Yet amidst the fury, tragedy struck an enemy blade flashed brutally, piercing Tahoma's side deeply. Caleb cried out in anguish, grief raw and visceral, yet rage surged in him, hot and blinding, driving him forward. He fought with a fury ignited by loss, determined that this noble warrior's sacrifice would not be in vain. The bandit leader, a hulking brute, eyes glinting coldly beneath the scarred brim of his hat, stepped forward to confront Caleb directly. Their eyes met, cold recognition passing between predator and prey. "You're stubborn, stranger," the leader sneered, voice thick with contempt. "Should have left them to their fate." Caleb raised his rifle steadily, fingers gripping tightly. "Their fate is my own now," he replied with cold resolve. The confrontation erupted brutally. Caleb fought desperately against the seasoned bandit, their battle savage, relentless, each blow traded in desperation. Fatigue burned Caleb's muscles, yet determination pushed him forward relentlessly. Sarah watched from safety's edge, heart pounding wildly as she protected her children, torn between terror and fierce admiration for Caleb's bravery. In a desperate, decisive moment, Caleb's enemy faltered, slipping slightly on blood-soaked earth. Caleb seized the chance, lunging forward, striking decisively, ending the bandits' threat with finality. Silence returned abruptly, heavy and oppressive, yet victory rang bitterly hollow. Caleb turned swiftly toward Tahoma, kneeling hurriedly beside the fallen warrior, whose breath came shallow and labored. Sarah rushed forward, dropping gently beside. Caleb, grief-stricken and heavy. "You fought bravely," Caleb whispered, voice choking with emotion. Tahoma's eyes, heavy yet peaceful, met his own. "We share wounds now," Tahoma murmured, strength fading with each breath. "Our pain made us brothers." His hand lifted weakly, clasping Caleb's tightly. Caleb squeezed back fiercely, tears burning hotly behind stoic eyes. Tahoma's gaze softened, turning toward Sarah and her frightened children, who clustered nearby, small faces pale, yet brave. "Protect them, Caleb," Tahoma whispered, voice barely audible. "Promise." Caleb nodded solemnly. "With my life," he vowed. Tahoma's lips curved faintly, a peaceful acceptance settling over him. "Then it was good," he whispered. Gently, eyes closing slowly, peace finally claiming him. Silence lingered heavily, grief tangible in the twilight. Caleb knelt silently, shoulders shaking slightly with barely contained sorrow. Sarah reached out, gently touching Caleb's shoulder, her presence grounding him in the unbearable moment. "He was a good man," she murmured softly. Caleb stood slowly, gaze steady, yet tinged with deep sadness. "One of the best," he replied. Quietly, his eyes drifted to her children, huddled protectively nearby. Innocence forever altered by cruelty, witnessed too soon. Caleb moved decisively then, carefully gathering Tahoma's body respectfully, laying it to rest beneath a towering oak. A silent farewell whispered through the trees, honoring the warrior's bravery and sacrifice. Caleb felt the painful weight of loss anew, yet within that pain ignited fierce purpose to honor Tahoma's life through protecting these innocent souls. Night deepened around them, shadows enveloping the clearing like comforting shrouds. Caleb built a modest fire, its flickering warmth driving away the oppressive gloom. Sarah gathered her children closely, soothing them gently as exhaustion slowly overcame fear, lulling them into restless sleep. Caleb and Sarah sat quietly beside. The fire, its glow dancing softly upon weary faces marked by grief and resilience. She studied him gently, eyes reflecting newfound admiration and respect. Caleb, uncomfortable beneath her perceptive gaze, stared deeply into the fire, haunted yet hopeful. "You saved us," she finally whispered, voice gentle yet strong. Caleb shook his head slightly, eyes distant. "We saved each other," he replied. Quietly, his words heavy with meaning. He sighed deeply, glancing toward the sleeping children. "I never thought I'd care for anyone again after the war took everything from me." Sarah reached forward cautiously, gently placing her hand over his own, comfort offered in simple warmth. "Yet you found us, and you fought bravely, as if we were yours," she murmured tenderly. "That's not the act of a broken man. It's the act of a man reborn." Caleb's chest tightened, emotions he had buried deeply rushing suddenly to the surface. Yet he embraced them slowly, understanding now that vulnerability could bring strength. "I lost my family once," he said slowly, quietly bearing the truth he had hidden for years. "But perhaps, through this pain, we can rebuild something new." Sarah nodded gently, tears glittering faintly in her eyes. "My husband told me. Once that grief is love refusing to let go," she whispered softly. "Maybe we don't have to let go fully. Maybe we can carry them with us, live bravely for them." Caleb met her gaze warmly, understanding passing silently between them. Quiet commitment forged in mutual loss and shared strength. They sat silently, watching flames dance brightly, illuminating their path forward. As morning arrived gently, Caleb rose slowly, understanding clearly the difficult choices awaiting them. The town lay distant yet reachable, promising safety for Sarah and her children. Caleb knew his duty remained clear, yet his heart ached quietly. "We must move soon," he told Sarah quietly, resolve etched deeply into his voice. "I'll see you safely home." Sarah watched him carefully, sensing the depth of his unspoken struggle. "You could stay," she suggested softly, eyes hopeful yet resigned. Caleb shook his head gently, gaze distant yet resolute. "My path isn't yours," he murmured with quiet conviction. "I've learned to trust again, but my place is still out there somewhere. I'll always carry this family in my heart, though." Sarah nodded solemnly, understanding clearly. "Then let's remember each other well," she said softly, her voice steady despite sadness. "We'll carry your memory too." They moved onward at first light, steps heavy yet determined, hearts bonded irrevocably through trial and grief. At the edge of the frontier town, safety beckoned, mingled bittersweetly. With parting's inevitable sorrow, Caleb faced Sarah quietly, courage and tenderness intertwined deeply in his final gaze. "Live well," he told her firmly yet gently. "Raise them to remember bravery and kindness." Sarah nodded, heart aching yet proud. "And you find peace, Caleb?" He watched them step forward slowly, disappearing gradually into civilization's comforting embrace. His chest tightened painfully, yet he felt peace also bittersweet, yet profound. Turning away quietly, Caleb Benton walked toward wilderness once more, heart heavier yet fuller than ever. Solitude embraced him gently again, familiar yet changed profoundly, no longer a lonely exile, but a guardian whose path crossed those he had saved, whose memories he carried proudly. Though unknown threats awaited him still, Caleb felt strength. Anew his wounds healing slowly, transformed through bonds forged deeply by adversity and sacrifice. Yet, even as he faded into distant hills, unseen shadows moved subtly behind him, hinting at unfinished battles and new alliances to come. Caleb walked forward willingly, forever changed, understanding clearly now that redemption was not solitary, nor easily won, but always possible for those brave enough to fight for love and hope. And behind him, somewhere safe, Sarah and her children thrived, living reminders of courage, sacrifice, and bonds powerful enough to transcend tragedy itself.